Okay, millennials in the election. Well, when polled, millennials said, if you had a choice, Clinton is president, Trump is president, random lottery to choose the president, Barack Obama promoting himself a life term, or a giant meteor striking the earth that extinguishes all human life, 36% choose Obama, 26% choose a random lottery, 23% would rather have a giant meteor striking the earth to extinguish all human life than either candidate.
Wow. That's frightening.
Well, I don't put too much faith in this. I think it's like, if you're like 22 years old, you get asked at a poll, would you rather have a meteor strike? You're like, oh yeah, totally, I'm all in the meteor. So I would put it. But it is true. Millennials, which are defined anyone from 82 through 96 are millennials. 83 through 96 are millennials. They are increasingly independent. They don't want to be identified with Republicans or Democrats. And it's increasingly so. Not only that, according to recent polls, 1/3 of millennials saying that they will vote for a third party this election, when asked. The traditional wisdom says that both parties do a bad job reaching out to millennials. That they need to shift the identity of the party to attract young people. I want to suggest that maybe something else is going on, and I'll use religious studies theory to show this. Religiously, the big trend you've seen in the last 20 years is the rise of what they call the nuns. That's not N-U-N-S, not a lot of women in black habits, but rather those people who are unaffiliated, the ones who do not identify with any religious tradition. That has been spiked in the last 30 years. That spike is driven largely by millennials. Millennials are the group that more than any other demographic group identify themselves as having no particular religious tradition. They are particularly anti-religion. If you ask them, are you religious or not? More than any other group, they are not religious, they claim. So, the big question for people like me is, are millennials different than previous generations? They are certainly claiming to be unaffiliated more. They're claiming to have no religion more, but are they actually different? Well, when you look at the big picture, if you look at importance of religion, it actually really hasn't shifted that much. And as more millennials come online, you would expect it to start dipping just because millennials start bringing down the weight. Maybe it's not as important. And when you start looking at belief structure, like belief in heaven, belief in hell, they're not too dissimilar to other groups. So what's going on? They don't want to affiliate with any religion, but they believe largely the same thing. When you look at things that are spiritual, once again, feel a sense of wonder. It's about the same or more. Sense of gratitude. Think about the meaning and purpose of life. They're spiritual at the same level. So I want to suggest that what shifted is not so much religious attitudes, it's terminology. Millennials, by and large, really don't like labels. They don't want to be seen as religious, as a part of religious institutions. They want to be seen as spiritual, not religious. That's the one on the left. And when you burrow down into it, it's just they don't want to have a religious label. They will do the same things. They just don't want to be identified with any label, even a Christian label. I so often ask my students at the first day to write, what's your religious background? And I would say 2/3 of them write, I have no religious background, I follow Jesus. Which doesn't make sense to a lot of other people. They don't even want to be called Christians. They want to be Jesus followers, right? So they just don't want that label. Likewise, they really don't want like institutions. They really have lost trust in institutions. And not just religious institutions. Here's a professor of sociology has noted that it's really just all institutions. So let's see if that's what's going on religiously. They're not really any different. They just don't like labels, don't like institutions. Well, likewise, when you look at political areas, they tend not to want labels again. So are you patriotic? 57% said yes. But do you identify as a patriot? Oh, no. Are you progressive? Oh, yes, we are. Do you identify as progressive? No. All right, do you like feminism? Yes. Are you a feminist? No. Do you like capitalism? Oh, well, yeah. Are you capitalist? No. In other words, just we'll hold the positions, just don't call us that. That's what you see again and again. And so even these are amazing. This is by generation. Do you identify with this? Patriotic person, okay. But look at this. Millennials are the least likely to call themselves environmentalists. That just is demonstrably not true in being environmental. What the heck is going on there? They just don't like a label. I will act environmentally, but I'm not an environmentalist, right? Even you ask, are you a millennial? They don't want it. You know, a third of them don't even want to be called a millennial. If you get down to college graduate, almost half of millennials say, I'm not a millennial. It's just a label of a demographic group. We're so label averse, don't even give us a label for who we are. I mean, it's shocking how label averse they are. And then talk about institutions. What we see in institutions is, so this is how much is our institutions having a positive effect? Churches. That's millennials going from 73% just in 2010 to 55%. National media, 40%, the highest, to 27%. View of Congress, everybody's lost trust in Congress, but millennials have started off higher and went lower. So what does it say? Millennials are less trusting of institutions now. And I think if you look at millennial support for Bernie, which was off the charts, it was largely an institution thing, because Bernie's not a Democrat. I mean, he wasn't a Democrat. He kind of had a little flirtatious period for 6 months, and he's, once again, by the way, no longer a Democrat, right? And he's certainly not an institutional Democrat, right? That fits perfectly into this millennial idea. You get to, you know, not have to buy into an institution. So what's going on? It's not that millennials are more independent than others. It's not that millennials really like third parties. They just don't want to be labeled as such. If you call them on a phone and say, hey, are you going to vote for the Democrats? Hell no. I don't want to be, I'm not voting for any group, right? I'm not voting for any, you know, don't put me in a box. But does that make them closeted Democrats? Because if you look at religiously unaffiliated voters, religiously unaffiliated voters have been trending vastly towards the Democrats. It is now almost as solid a base for Democrats as evangelicals are for Republicans. Right? This is the base of the Democrats. Right? The problem is, yes, they vote in percentage high marks for Democrats, they just don't vote. Religiously unaffiliated. And why do they not vote? Well, who are the religiously unaffiliated? Millennials? Young people don't vote. Right? Just young people don't ever vote. We like to think that they would at some point, but they don't. And this year, millennials report that they're even going to vote less than they did in 2012. So right now, they're kind of a ready-made Democratic base. They're the unaffiliated. Unaffiliated vote more for Democrat than any other. Yet they don't vote. But let's project forward. That's population going forward. If they become like other generations, and that is they tend to vote as they get older and either have a sense of perpetuity or finiteness, and they remain unaffiliated in the same way, maybe this is the base. And I think as we move forward, what you're going to see as the base of the Democratic Party is minorities and millennials, both two groups. And I think these two graphs, if you're a Republican strategist, have got to be the most frightening ones. Young people are becoming a bigger and bigger portion. Millennials just passed boomers as the biggest demographic group in America. Minorities are becoming a larger and larger segment of the population. If they're both strongly Democratic, something's got to shift. Make sense? So, are millennials more third party, more not more independent? No. They're basically Democratic base. They just don't want to be called it. They don't want to be associated with it. And so if you're the Democrats, you've got to sort of recognize that and cultivate them as a base without ever calling them a base and without ever suggesting that they vote for them because it's an institution. Make sense? All right. Time for apple pie. That's more American. Or there's also coffee cake. Basil wants to suggest that he didn't do the best job slicing, but there's also whoopie cream to put on. So we'll pass those out. Let me push pause on this. And are there questions with this?
Part of the signage, do not read, Stephen. Do not eat or drink.
Oh, yeah. Basil, how do you push pause on this?
It's on the right.
Oh, it's on the right.
Silver.
This thing?